Welcome back to the Spoonie and Caregiver Live podcast with me, your host, Jordan Banderas. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode, shall we? Now, I want to start this episode with this because this is something that I'm very passionate about and I really want to talk about this. And the reason is this. I honestly think that we are losing our understanding and compassion towards things that we don't either care about or things that don't really have anything to do with us. Like in our community with Spoonies and Caregivers, is more about like invisible illnesses. Just because an illness is not visible, a lot of Spoonies face this problem where people don't understand them and they don't show any compassion. Instead of that, they actually get judged, they get laughed at, they get looked at, they get stared down, they get all these things, which unfortunately is not going to help in their situation because they could be facing depression, so they're going to feel even worse, which unfortunately can lead to suicide. They might feel that they're making up their condition because people don't really understand it. It's just something that's going to happen because we want to feel connection, and sometimes because we have an illness, we're not able to have that connection, especially if the other person that we're trying to connect with doesn't really understand us. Now, this really matters. The reason why it matters is because if we become or if we decide to develop our understanding and our compassion, people that are facing illnesses or have to wear canes, have to use crutches, have to use wheelchairs, walkers, anything that helps them with whatever they're facing with, is gonna feel less like a burden and more like, you know what, I'm doing this for me. Here's why I say this, because this has happened to my wife. Now, by now you should know that pretty much everything that I talk about is something that has happened to my wife because I'm her either my wife or me, because I'm her caregiver and I've seen a lot of stuff when it comes to her and how she gets treated with her illnesses. And here's a quick story about this. And this is the one that it really made me so mad, and it made me understand that people really don't care, really don't understand, and that's why we need to be more compassionate. So there was a few years ago in 2019, before COVID, my work had a company party at the aquarium here in Salt Lake. So we decided to go. I was excited, my wife was excited, but here's the thing, the aquarium is not that big, but my wife can't really walk that far because of her hip issue, and back then she still had a tear in her labrum, so she couldn't really walk. So me being her husband, I just said, like, you know what, why don't we call and see if they have an actual wheelchair for you and I'll push you around. She was all like, oh, are you sure about that? I'm like, yeah, like how hard it can be. It wasn't that hard or anything like that. So we get there, we get the wheelchair, and all of a lot of my coworkers actually were staring at my wife, and I saw that, and I was mad. But because it was a work party, I couldn't say anything because HR was there. So I couldn't say anything, or I couldn't say what I really wanted to say because I will come off as rude, and then on Monday I will be in HR. So everybody started looking at my wife, like saying like, oh, you like the way that she was being looked at. I could just see it. They were saying to themselves like, why is she on a wheelchair? Why does she need a wheelchair? She can walk, And I was getting mad. But there was one particular person that kept staring and staring at my wife. And I wanted to say something so bad, but I'm like, I'm gonna be the bigger person. But the way that this person was staring at my wife made my wife cry. Because she wasn't just looking, she was staring at her. Like, the way that she was staring at her was more like, just get up and walk, like almost like calling my wife lazy. And I saw that. I know the person. I work with the person. So I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, don't let the bad Jordan come out, especially in the work party. You know? So I was mad after that. And I saw how people stare at my wife. And then I started looking at other people, like how they were getting stared at. Like, I have seen people with their cochlear implants being looked at and or stared at and laughed at. But I'm like, the way that I see it is like, that's pretty cool that somebody came up with something that is going to help you learn, because I'm not learn, but hear, because I don't know what it's like to not be able to hear. I don't know what it feels to not be able to see. And that's the thing. That's what compassion and understanding is. Being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that's something that for some reason we're losing. And if we lose that as a society, the society will crumble, because we're just gonna judge each other. Like, this is one of the reasons why my wife doesn't want to wear her cane. This is one of the reasons why my wife doesn't want to use a wheelchair when she has to, because she's going to be looked at, she's going to be laughed at, she's going to be stared at and probably judged. But if there was no judgment, probably she will be doing a lot better by now. Now, the way that we're raised sometimes is that we have to take care, or we have to care about what other people think. And this is very important, because I used to be that way. I used to think, I used to care about what other people will think about me and my wife and my marriage. So anytime that my wife will get sick or anything like that, I will get like, not mad, but I was like frustrated, because I'm like, I just want you to get better. And I want us to be, like, the TV family that doesn't have any issues. But that's not real life, right? So I understood that I myself was losing my compassion and my understanding. So one of the things I had to do is that, because of what had happened at that point in the aquarium, I was like, I need to regain this. So my wife helped me. I started seeing through everything through my wife's eye. Like, when she doesn't want to wear or use her cane, when she doesn't want to use her cane, like, I totally understand why. Because every time she does it, people keep looking at her like, you look fine. I don't see any problems with you. Like, but when you do an MRI or an actual freaking X-ray, you will see the problems. When you look at her blood work, you will see the problems. When you look at her medical chart, you will see the problems. But you don't see that. You don't. A Spoonie is not gonna have that hanging on their neck and be like, oh, look at me, because then people are gonna judge them and be like, oh, you're so needy. You just want attention, right? So I had to get my compassion and my understanding back, because I was losing it myself. So after I started doing that with my wife, like seeing everything through her eyes, I feel at least that it helped her a lot, because now she knows that I understand, and I understand what she's going through. Like, I might not be the one dealing with it, I might not be the one with the pain, but she understands that now I understand, and I have the compassion to try to help her on whatever she needs. Obviously, there's gonna be things like that I cannot do for her, like take her depression or anxiety away or her pain away. So she understands that. But as long as I'm able to understand it, that she's gonna be in pain, that she's in a lot of pain, that she's in all of these situations because of her illnesses, she's not feeling like an outcast. She feels she feels accepted. So when we have understanding and compassion, people feel accepted. They don't feel judged. They don't feel like they have to hide their illnesses. Because if you hide your illness, how are you going to find the solution? Sometimes you can't do it alone. You're gonna need help. This is why I created a community where if you guys want to share tips on how to deal with chronic pain, migraines, things like that, wherever you're going to, you can ask the questions and you won't be judged. That's why I started this, because I see the judgment that my wife has gone through and I hate it. Like, it makes me mad. And this is how, and I mean, and this is why I wanted to talk about this, because with everything that's going on, I feel like we are really losing our compassion and our understanding. And one of the things that I'm gonna ask you to do, if you want to do it, it's just try to understand that Spoonie, and try to show some compassion, because you might see that person will feel understood, and they might be able to open up to you. You might be able to learn more about that person that they probably you never knew before. That's pretty much what has happened between me and my wife. Like, she has been able to open up to me, like she doesn't hide her pain anymore. Now she's been able to ask for help, which is the hardest thing for a Spoonie to do, let's be honest. And it has helped me a lot as well. So that's why I'm asking you to do this, because it's gonna help you. And if you're a caregiver, it's gonna help your Spoonie. If you're a Spoonie, it's gonna help your caregiver understand you more. But that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about in today's episode. I hope you guys are enjoying the episode. Again, thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the new listeners, the new followers. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe so we can grow even more, so we can make this the community for the Spoonies and the caregivers. Because if we don't talk about our issues, we suffer in silence. Believe me. I've done it myself. I have suffered in silence. And once I was able to open up, I feel a lot better. Same thing with my wife, and hopefully same thing with you. So don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I'll leave you and before I almost forget this, if you want to send me feedback or your story, or you have any questions, you can send them to me on IM. Or you can email me at the Spoonie and Caregiver life@gmail.com. And I'll leave you like always. Always take care of yourself and have a great day.